this is a big, big shift in the way in which companies are reaching customers, but there's a lot of sort of hype around it as well. And so what we're going to do is explore in detail exactly how they are using real-time strategies and the lessons that they've learned. Amit, do you want to kick off and just tell us a little bit about how you get those flowers in my wife's hand perfectly timed?
Yeah, so we obviously want to lead with knowing that it came from you. And it was very thoughtful, and it was really timely. But, I think the point that you made, real-time marketing for us, we'd like to separate the hype from the reality. And the reality for us is, if you think about real-time marketing, it's both real and timely, right? So for example, last Valentine's Day, we did this very interesting campaign, right? So generally when people think about geofencing, they think about, how do I get to the consumer in a real-time sort of locational context, right? But we think that, that only scratches the surface of real-time, because if a male is walking a week before to a jewelry store, let's say, so we went ahead and conquested all the Zales jewelry stores, right? They could be just going there for a watch repair. But 2 days before Valentine's Day, contextually, there are chances that you are going to buy something, a bracelet, let's say, for your significant other. So reaching the customer at that time and giving them an offer and saying, hey, our 1-800-Flower store is 50 meters away. Why don't you pick up a bouquet of flowers? So now you're bringing in real-time data, but also context on top of it, right? So this allows you to separate, the hype from what we see really moving the needle of the business.
And how much real-time marketing are you doing? I mean, is this something you're doing all the time, or do you switch it on and off, like around Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, all the other things that I forget and I shouldn't?
Sure, I think that's, it's, for us, we would like to make it a daily activity, if you will, but it has a lot of, as we'll get into, a lot of challenges around how to make it into a real-time activity, right?
Right.
So for example, a lot of marketers will think that retargeting is a real-time marketing activity. You have come to the site and you have left, right? But you have to understand the user's context. For example, we won't remarket if you came to our site and went to the sympathy collection or a funeral collection, right? Because we think that's off limits. So even though we have the tools to do it, what context triggers real time is a very thoughtful, deliberative outcome.
Right.
Right? So it's not just about setting up the tools that allow you to do it ad infinitum,
right,
but how are you doing it thoughtfully that adds value to the customer?
And Laura, just remind us very briefly the brands that you have, the sort of prominent brands under Mondelez, and then tell us a little bit about how you are approaching real-time marketing.
Right, so at Mondelez, we have a number of large snacking brands. Oreo, of course, the most famous.
Yes.
Also Ritz crackers and Trident gum. I think for us, real-time is a fundamental part of our communication strategy because we believe that it can drive business growth. I think we've obviously all heard of the Oreo Super Bowl example. I would challenge anyone in the audience who hasn't heard about it. And I think that was sort of us first dipping our toe in the water.
Or dunking your toe in
our toe
in the dark. In the water.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting example in how to really tap into the cultural zeitgeist of that moment and engage with that event. And we saw tremendous results. We saw a huge amount of engagement across Facebook and Twitter. But I think what's interesting is when you start to think about real time as an always-on approach. And so I'll share with you an example from our Nilla Wafers brand, a lesser-known biscuit brand from our North American, but fine biscuits.
Fine biscuits.
So relatively smaller with more of a constrained budget.
Quite.
And so we actually use Nilla as a way to experiment and say what would happen if we actually devoted 100% of our marketing budget to social media and to real time. So Nilla has a small sort of quiet base of really passionate fans. They're more sort of affluent moms, and they believe that these small moments of connection can really build relationships. And so what we did was we said, well, what if we spent 100% of our budget on social media and started to establish our voice? And so we established this new sassy tone for Nilla and introduced a number of what we called momisms. So things like, hey, hello, it's my 18th annual 21st birthday. Thank you very much. So something we can all relate to.
It's a mumism, is it? It's a new one. I'll write that down. I'll get that in The Economist.
Okay. So what was really interesting about that model was it wasn't just about reacting to culture in terms of our creative.
Right.
It was also about real time in terms of how we apply media. So we used Facebook as a test platform to actually say which pieces of content best deliver. And we could track in real time what we were getting the most traction behind and then amplify through paid dollars. And so the results on that were tremendous. So we saw through social media alone, 13% sales lift on the business, a 5x return on our dollars through Facebook. And when you actually dug a little bit deeper, 4 times the engagement on those posts that included social context of some sort.
Right. Now we're talking real-time marketing. I can't help but thinking, to me, it sounds a little bit just like personalized marketing. Isn't it just better personalized marketing, or is there something really different here? What do you think, guys?
I definitely think that there's something different about it, in the sense that we have never been in a context that we have access to so much data. Mm-hmm. And I think especially in a very mobile-first world, even though that's a very cliched term, I think it's a data-first world that we are living in, right? So the ability to then act on the data has really, I think, super catalyzed marketing. And in my sort of view of the world, and we are an online-first company, we think of real-time marketing as not only changed the face of marketing, which is outbound, but what happens when you come to the site. So I'll give you an example. We love what Expedia does, that when you come to the site, they'll show you, you're checking out an hotel, they'll say you 29 people are checking it out concurrently with you. Now, that's an information, that's not an offer. That's not saying that I've made the path more personalized for you. It's just exposing a data point that might enhance the transactional outcome of that session, right? So we take a very broad view of what we consider real-time marketing, and it includes all the sort of the hyped up things, that are sort of prevalent in the marketplace, but even these deeper layers, which are traditionally not in the purview of marketing, but we eventually think do enhance the marketing outcomes.
It's interesting. I mean, I think data certainly plays a huge role in terms of understanding kind of where people are, what they're doing, what they're interested in. I think for us, it's also, real-time engagement is a way to actually engage in a natural way with consumers. This is how they're consuming media. They're consuming more and more media every day, and they're doing it in an always-on, sort of infinite stream when you look at how they consume on their mobile phones. So it's really important to us to develop content that looks like the content above and below it. So how do we actually engage in a more real-time way that's natural to how people are consuming media?
And I'm just running this through my mind. If, for example, with The Economist, a lot of our readers, they read us at airports, and thinking, if we were to try and hit someone with a contextualized real-time marketing, we see them getting on an international flight or about to, we can serve something up. The problem is you never know what mindset they're in, right? Sure. They might be like running to get that flight, and they're going to miss it if they're not. And all of a sudden, this thing pops up and it says, "Buy The Economist now."
Right.
There won't be any discount because we don't offer discounts, but nevertheless, buy it now.
Right.
Okay, we do a bit, but not. And that's bad. We've just alienated someone. I mean, you can't control that, can you, in real-time marketing? It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And we see other examples of it because, most of the people in this room probably rely on email as a major driver of their marketing outcomes. And one of the things we see is, and we have to really think about it from an algorithmic gifting point of view. And by that I mean, what is the churn of relationships in any given cohort? Because let's say you send something to your significant other this year, we have to really calculate the probability that you are with that significant other the next year.
Oh, good point. Good point.
So, it's
good point.
Real time has a lot of dimensions.
Right, that's real time information. How do you do that? Call the NSA. Yeah, okay.
I think it's interesting. As marketers, I think we're seduced by the technology. So I think we love what the technology enables. We love what we're going to learn. I think we have to challenge ourselves to think about the consumer and what is the utility or the value for them. Because I think it's a really slippery slope in terms of constantly pushing communications at people as they're on the move.
So let's drill down and say exactly how are you set up to do this? I mean, any people in the audience here who were thinking of how they can set up their real-time marketing teams, how do you structure it? People, processes, and technology. Do you want to start?
Sure. I'll start by saying it is not easy. There's a reason why we're talking about this so much is because traditionally marketing organizations are not set up this way. We brief for a campaign, we get a neat campaign that we activate for a quarter's worth of time, but we don't actually operate on an always-on basis. So for us, I think there's 2 big lessons. One is, you need to start with cultural transformation. And so we talk a lot about, agility and real-time agility, and how do we actually enable not only our marketers but the rest of the organization to strive to be able to react in real time.
So how do you have like pre-programmed messages that you can send out at the press of a button? Is there a team that sort of does that? What does legal do? I mean, it usually hyperventilates when you send out anything that legal hasn't seen with a Twitter hashtag.
I've been very good friends with legal. So I think to date what we've done is this war room structure, and so we know in advance, here's the calendar of events that are going to be both relevant, culturally and relevant to our brand. Nice. And it's really about setting up the right team of enabled, empowered people to make decisions in the moment. So that would include your marketers, your lawyers, your corporate communications specialists, your ad agencies. So for Oreo example, the Super Bowl blackout tweet, there was a collection of people around a table ready to move in the event that something happened. It just so happened that something really notable and surprising kind of went on. I think there's a certain amount of planning to be spontaneous that happens, so we know what we expect to happen. The real magic is when you're actually set up with the right people in the room to react when something happens.
That's great.
So, the empowerment, I think, is a really important construct, because I think everyone wants to do better marketing, everyone wants to do more relevant marketing, but the empowerment within organizations, I think, is a real challenge. So what we have done is actually pulled out sort of real-time marketing tactics and put it into the innovation group, which is a broad mandate to work across departments and silos, right, that naturally come up. But, I boil it down simply to thinking about the ABCDs. So you want to take care of the attribution, because attribution is ultimately what will give you the fuel to make the scaled up argument of spend, right? So you want to take care of attribution first. You want to have a defensible budget in order to do real time, right? You cannot really do real time by just having a small one-day Facebook campaign, right? You want to be astute, I think, about content, because ultimately people are consuming and reacting to content, right? And then the D for me is distribution. For real time to really have any efficacy, you really have to think through in a very deliberate fashion, what is the right distribution channel, right? So it's not just because wine is popular today, let's shift to wine and start doing some videos around that, because you might get only 15 views. Whereas even if we'll do sometimes a local radio spot, and you look at the reach of the local radio spots, it's enormous.
Yes.
Right? So this ABCDs in my mind are, some constructs to think about.
And do either of you have a sort of policy for what can go in the content? Symantec, it's a big security company in Silicon Valley. I talked to them. They say, we have three things. One, so long as it doesn't cause, legal to hyperventilate. Two, it's got to be consistent with the brand. But three, your granny must like it. If your granny doesn't like what she sees, that's bad. And they're a security company, so don't ask me why the granny's looking at it. But nevertheless, do you have written policies?
So we do. There's no mention of grannies.
Oh, there's no mention.
Anywhere.
What about the moms?
The sassy moms.
The sassy mom.
So we spend a lot of time actually revamping our social media guidelines. So actually saying ahead of time, what's the traffic light system? What are the things that are probably fine, we don't really need to spend a lot of time on? What are the things that are going to cause us to pause and maybe call a lawyer? And then what are the red lights that just don't even bother going into, because we know ahead of time it's not something that will work?
Great.
Actually, we paradoxically find that the legal folks don't have a good hold over what is sort of okay to do and not okay to do, right?
I found that all the time.
I always take them out for a session of drinking before asking them a question.
In the room. Drinking. That's the way to do it.
But what we have realized is that empowerment sort of changes the idea that you need to provide written policies, because it's difficult to enforce them. Right? At the end of the day, you want the teams to react to something which is very real, right? And put out a contextual marketing message that makes sense.
And do you have like a save strategy? So if something goes out and it's wrong, you've got to react to it very quickly. So
absolutely.
You've got yourselves sort of lined up to react if something does.
Yeah, so we have a cross-functional PR, sort of legal and communications team that will react to sort of any negative response that we'll get from a certain...
Got it. And where is all this going? Isn't it 2-3 years out, are we going to have sort of predictive real-time marketing? So I'll actually get stuff, 2 days before I know I actually want it. I mean, how is that?
The future is going to be that we'll tell you who the significant other is.
Oh, that's perfect. Perfect. That's great growth strategy.
New business model.
Yeah, it's like Tinder and
You heard it here
OkCupid.
first. 1-800 dating. Next person.
I mean, for us, we're trying to think about real time, not just in terms of social media. I think we've done a lot of that in the past, but looking at our overall kind of advertising and media mix. So being able to actually unlock real-time content and real-time video content more specifically across media channels becomes very, very interesting. And so if you think, about a world in the very near future, we believe, where we could activate real-time video and then even, have it immediately available on TV, that changes your content model entirely. And so we've been really focused on developing capability around real-time video production and distribution. We've got very exciting news coming in the next several days that we'll be able to share. But it's
Do you want to tell us now?
I cannot.
No one's
I've
listening.
been sworn to secrecy.
Okay.
But it is a huge focal point for us. I think the other thing is, how do we actually focus on real-time engagement overall? So I'll give you an example. Just this past weekend, I was at the South by Southwest festival. I made it here today. And we did an activation on Oreo called Trending Bending. And so we took inspiration from the very popular Daily Twist campaign, where it was culture for 100 days through the eyes of an Oreo. And we said, what if we could actually turn that model into our product delivery? So we created a vending machine that was powered by Twitter that actually produced, using 3D printing technology, Oreo cookies based on what was trending online. And so real time, people could see, using different colors, flavors, and designs of the cream on the cookie, what a cultural trend tastes like. And so that's the next model. When you think about it, what if we could actually implement real-time feedback loops with consumers? And so we're not necessarily held to the traditional sort of R&D model. What if we could actually get instant feedback and we could react in that way?
To add to that, we saw that last year we did a pretty interesting campaign with Reddit. And one of the topics that was trending in one of the subreddits was that someone had found a safe in their home. And they were asking, should I open the safe, right? So we came up with a creative execution that was around Mother's Day, and it was saying mom would have opened the safe, right? So it really struck a chord, but there was no logo in that ad. And we did it very purposely.
Right.
So I think the future of real time in my mind is going to be, how do you intertwine yourself in conversation without appropriating the conversation? Because you want to be relevant, but you do not want to hijack it.
I think that's so interesting. We talk a lot about focusing on how a brand behaves more than what it says about itself. Sure. And so I think that's so interesting what you say in terms of using context to communicate.
Terrific. I'd like to open to the floor for questions. Who would like to ask my panelists a question about how to find their next significant other? Here, this lady in the third row.
I have that one already. So
You do? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Is that... Are you on? Yeah.
I'd like to find out how you measure the effectiveness of these real-time marketing channels that you're using.
Metrics.
Sure.
So who wants to go first?
I can go. I think for us, what we are really focused on is how real-time marketing drives business results. So, we certainly know that there's easy ways to measure engagement in terms of likes and retweets and posts. But what's more interesting to us is how it drives impact to sales. And so on the Nilla example that I cited earlier, we spent a lot of time with data logics, actually understanding what is the impact on bricks and mortar sales. There was an example out of the UK on Cadbury as well, where we spent a lot of time understanding what's the impact on sales, and then what's the aggregate impact of Facebook plus TV. So when we actually increase our investment in paid on Facebook at the same time as kind of highly viewed TV telecasts, what is the impact? So, so through tools like data logics, we can start to understand how that actually impacts us.
Yeah, we use sort of what we internally call marginal ROMI. So we take a look at what is the return on marginal investment. And we have a very portfolio approach. So what happens is that we are not just looking at marketing in terms of driving demand, but ultimately amongst the channels at your disposal, what is the next marginal dollar best spent at? So in real time, we are optimizing the day before Valentine's Day. Should we go out and buy 1 billion display ads? Or at that moment, should we go into Google search and really buy out the category flowers as a term, right? So it's not just the first layer of data scratching where you're making decisions on what was the business impact.
Right.
But in real time, how are you optimizing your spend as well?
Got it. Great question. Thank you very much. Other questions? One down at the left-hand side at the back there. Yes, there. Lovely.
Hey there. Yes. Hi. My name's Robin Wilson, and I'm a subject matter expert for a consulting firm here in New York called ThoughtWorks. So one thing, Laura, you mentioned that I thought was pretty interesting is that marketers get pretty romanced by the technology. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of wondering, I really liked your South by Southwest idea of the printout. How quickly are you getting these ideas out to the marketplace, making changes, and going back in to be successful? Because there can be a lot of iterations that happen, and it could never get to the market.
Absolutely. I actually think that's one of my biggest learnings over the past year is doing is better than waiting and trying to make it perfect, because very quickly when you look at how rapidly the world is evolving, these projects get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they're terrifying and you say, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. So the Oreo trending vending example is a great one, actually. That was put together by a company called Maya out of Pittsburgh. And they focus on iterative design processes, and they love the notion of prototyping, rapid prototyping, quick user feedback loops to actually get things out very quickly. So that activation was put together in a matter of months, and we were actually able to react on the fly. We were able to say what's trending, on Friday versus Saturday. What are the most popular flavors? How can people remix them and create hybrid flavors? And so I think when I talk about real-time agility, that type of behavior is very, very important throughout the organization to make these types of things successful.
I want to just ask a quick question. Just listening to you talking, and the creepy line. Where do we draw the creepy line in all of this? Because at some point I like the fact where I am and who I'm dating and all this kind of. Well, actually, sorry, I'm married. So who I'm with. but the fact is, it could really unnerve a load of people, right? I mean, there's so much consciousness now about privacy issues.
So we definitely know if you are dating and you are married.
You do.
Right.
That's good. Okay.
So
now I'm really
we look at multiple frequency orders from the same guy. Okay. You can make the correlation.
That's scary.
No,
not for me, but for lots of other people.
I think that's the real question in my mind, because data has become such a fuel to this real-time marketing, and it is so seductive because you have such enormous metadata now that you can act on.
So how do you do it? How do you stop yourselves doing that?
So I think it's twofold, right? One, we are led by the idea that ultimately people are forgiving in marketing, but they are not forgiving when you make a bad choice about that data. So if you let's say, one of my pet peeves I have is when I drop off a travel site, they will show which 2 cities I search for. I mean, that's if I'm sharing that tablet with someone else, that's a pretty personal data, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the way we look at it is that data, we have to be good stewards of it, and then we have to explicitly understand how we are using it. Right. I'll give you another example. So when people come to our site, right, and we tell them, can you give us some data about yourself? And they're like, no. But if we tell them that, okay, you're buying something for your wife, do you want us to pull all her likes from Facebook? Oh, go right ahead. I want to know what she likes.
Opt-in's fine.
Opt-in is fine.
And but most people, there's a lot of them, what I've been hearing today, there's a lot of collection which isn't opt-in.
But I think what in data we have to really understand is whose data are you connected to?
Right.
And is there a certain shareability that is okay and certain shareability that is not okay? And you have to really think through the use cases around those shareability, right?
Got it. Do you want to build on that or not?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The only thing I would add is just really being meticulous about understanding what the utility to the user is. So what is the end benefit to them?
So time for a couple more questions. One over there at the back. Can we get a mic over at the back? You don't have to run. We are insured, but just in case, I hope. Oh, well, yeah, okay, we'll go here first. There's a competition at the back there in real time for the microphone. That's great.
Hi, I'm a high school student from Canada, and as far as the job...
I'm from Canada too.
Oh, awesome. And as far as the job goes,
I'm surprised we don't know each other. Okay.
You didn't personalize your marketing.
Anyways, as far as job goes, I work at a skate shop, which is not that impressive. But anyway, my question is there a target market that real-time marketing works the best for example, like an age group or because I understand that social media, like I don't see a lot of 40-year-olds following, I guess, Oreo on Facebook and liking their posts. I see more younger kids, like grade 8s or grade 9s, liking those pages.
Got it. So it's a generational thing. Is it a generational
how do you
thing?
tailor your real-time marketing towards the different audiences on your different platforms?
Yes, I mean, I think real-time as a communications platform is interesting for all demographics. It's not just the younger users. Certainly millennials, we see a lot more real-time engagement through mobile. So when you look at how many hours of mobile media they're consuming every day and how they're consuming that and the streams of information that they're looking through, that becomes a really, really big piece of the strategy. So I think the work that we've done through mobile, through our partnerships with Twitter and Facebook and Google, to help reach those millennials has been really powerful for us.
Great. I think we should move. So we can get another question in from the back. There was somebody who was very keen to ask a question. Who isn't keen anymore? No? Yes? Anyone else want to ask a question? We've got time to get one more in. Come on, you're marketers. Don't be bashful. Be bashful. All right. Okay. I will ask one last question. What is the speed at which you need to react? I mean, what is real time? I mean, if I'm BP and I have the oil spill and I've got to deal with that, it's real time for me 6 months, a year, 2 years? I mean, how do I think about real time? Do I need to do real time for, the first week and then I can back off? How do you define time frames?
I think in our business, it really depends on two things, right? What is the importance of that occasion in your life, right? And how close you are to that occasion. And then how real is the real-time offer,
okay,
right? Because ultimately, people are reacting not just to the timeliness of the offer, but what is the gravitas of that offer, right? If the offer is just, you get 0% off, but we have reached you right now,
right?
People are going to be like, that's not a real offer, right? So the way we think about it is, and we have perishability, right? If Aunt Sally is not sick tomorrow, and we are hitting you tomorrow, then it's a perishable, it's a useless marketing venue, right?
I would just say there's a difference between timely and real time, and your communication strategy and your content strategy should be inclusive of both. You don't need to be commenting on every single thing every single moment.
Got it.
But you should have a point of view on how you're going to communicate overall.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, we had flowers, we had chocolates, we had relationship advice. This was our Dr. Phil session. Please thank my panelists. They've been terrific. Thank you both. You're wonderful. Thanks.